Greetings, televiewers of Dmrtv, and welcome. Good evening to you all to another very interesting session of our weekly program, the debate over the Divine Mercy Radio Television. This program comes to you every Saturday from 9 p.m. and is, of course, a program which is meant to enliven our intellectual capacities, to feed us and to nourish us with a whole lot of knowledge, especially on the part of our debaters. It is on this count that today we are taking on board another very, very interesting topic for debate this evening. What you notice the fact that, yes, in most societies, the traditional moral norms are not as purported by many to be placed into a compromise or jeopardy in whatsoever reason. They are not to be tampered with, as many people are said. Meanwhile, others have equally viewed the fact that beginning from evolution and cognizant of the fact that society is changing, some moral traditional norms could be looked into, could be evolved, could be developing as time goes on, depending on circumstances at hand. It is on this count that we shall be considering a very, very interesting debate topic tonight, which is captioned, "Today's pursuit of living life to the fullness is a direct threat to society's traditional moral values." I take it again. Today's pursuit of living life to the fullest is a direct threat to society's traditional moral values. We shall be debating on this topic, to the peak. We shall be descending the troughs and ascending the peaks. And of course, with regard to the arguments, to get insights on what this topic may hold for us as on the part of our debaters. I have the honor most respectfully to introduce to you our debaters for tonight, beginning with those for the motion. They are flanked by my left, Bernard Asongne. Good evening to you, Mr. Bernard, Brother Bernard.
Good evening, Father.
Yes, welcome again once more.
Thank you very much, Father.
And with you is Jude. Yes, Jude Aka, one of the seminarians, of course, working with Divine Mercy Radio Television. Good evening to you, Jude.
Good evening, Father.
And how are you this evening?
I'm very fine, thank you, Father.
We praise and thank God. I can see it from your smile. And these are the debaters for the motion. That is Bernard Asongne and Jude Aka, who will be debating for the motion. And those against, we have by my right, Franklin Fomukom. Good evening to you, Franklin.
Good evening, Father.
And how are you this evening?
I'm doing great.
It's a pleasure having you here. And on the same side will be Mr. Yannick Afonke. Good evening to you.
Thank you very much, Father.
And how are you this evening?
Well, thank God for it.
All right, happy to have you. So much ado about nothing, dear to be friend. I know that you are seated and your eyes are glued to your television screens in order to be nourished, to be awakened in one way or another concerning our debate topic for tonight. I take it again, today's pursuit of living life to the fullest is a direct threat to society's traditional moral values. I take you to the first speaker for the motion, Bernard Asongne.
Thank you very much, our own very vulnerable, venerable moderator. And greetings to you, dear televiewers of Divine Mercy Radio Television and the panelists on board today for tonight's debate. And I would like to begin the debate of today with a reflection on the beautiful hymn that is always sung at the entrance of many liturgical celebrations during masses, when we attend masses. And when I look at our topic of today, the song resounds all the more and it's most relevant. And I deemed it necessary to quote it at the beginning of these debates. And it goes thus: "Joy fills my heart when I heard them say, 'Let us go to God's house.'" When you listen to this refrain of this entrance hymn, it embodies the accompaniment of all finding their way back to the Father's house. And I dare to say, it is high time for the world to leave and keep aside its pursuits of the pleasures of this world and to embrace the truth of moral values that are in this world. For this sole sake and reason, I shall be arguing for the motion that today's pursuit of living life to the fullest is a direct threat to society's traditional moral values. Before we carry on with our debate for today, I would like us to give a close examination to two things that come up boldly in this debate of today. The very first is living life to the fullest, and the second is traditional moral values. The very first, living life to the fullest. What does it insinuate? And when we listen to this phrase, this quotation, what comes to the mind spontaneously? And that's what we shall be looking at. When a man voices out that I want to live my life to the fullest, indirectly we can say that young man or that woman is affirming without hesitation an individualistic way of life that focuses on personal freedom, that focuses on pleasure, that focuses on self-expression and immediate gratification of now. And this modern interpretation tends to emphasize doing what feels good or fulfilling at the moment without regard for traditional moral values. But on the other hand, when you look at traditional moral values, what picture does it bring to you at the moment? When you hear of things like these, you recall with certainty the faith of our fathers that is living still by traditional moral values. Much emphasis is given to virtues such as modesty, virtues such as restraint, virtues such as sacrifice, virtues such as self-discipline, responsibility, and above all, prioritizing the common good over individualistic pursuits. Now, after laying a very slow foundation, let us carry on with the points which I shall pose for this debate. The very first point I shall be posing for this debate is the advent of individualism over community and authentic family. The greatest evil, you will bear with me, that man in today's world must seek with all its courage to fight with his whole being and last energy is the virus of individualism, which is a fruit of the notion of living my life to the fullest. Philosophers and great thinkers will always say that in every circumstance of existence there are two basic realities: the part and the whole. And they state it very clearly: the part belongs to the whole and will never and ever be greater than the whole. And so, when you read a little bit on a Canadian philosopher and politician, Charles Taylor, he once said in his book, The Ethics of Authenticity, that when people in the society continually think of doing what they want, when people in the society continually think of self, the sense of purpose is lost. The individual finds himself where he is not supposed to. The individual does not think of others. The individual sets goals out of the box. His goals are within him and not out of him. But rather, setting these goals at the level and at the common good of the community, the individual sets these goals and these boundaries within himself. And in all of this, with the presence of such ills in the society, lives are only being flattened lives are only being narrowed, which contemporary culture must be aware. And contemporary culture, if it is not aware, will regret after. Let us come back to our own dearest Africa. Have we suddenly forgotten about our own venerable Pan-Africanists who fought against ills such as individualism for the safeguarding of our own traditional values that shaped them and brought them together? Have we forgotten so soon? We talk in the light of Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana. We talk of Nnamdi Azikiwe of Nigeria. We talk of Patrice Lumumba of Congo. We talk of Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso. And not leaving out Julius Nyerere of Tanzania with his famous African socialism known as Ujamaa. The list can continue on and on. After recalling these great men who gave their all for others and not for themselves, I am afraid of our own times that hangs a lot on trivialities and sanctions it as a life that is living itself to the fullest. Now, the question I would like to ask my opponents today for this debate is that a very glaring one enough, I would say. Where are we going to from here in this society? What is our purpose? And which legacy do we aim in today's society to leave for the next generation? Our fathers fought the race, they won. We are talking about them because of the legacy they left. What can this generation of today say? And what can they leave for the next generation? I fear a lot for this our generation of today. We must go back to the authentic value of communion and shared faith that rests and resonates in community and the family, and not be fooled by modern family lifestyles that seems to have become more fragmented, to have become more horrible, individualistic, materialistic, and vulnerable. I will leave my points at this.
Thank you very much, Bernard Asongne, first speaker for the motion that today's pursuit of living life to the fullest is a direct threat to society's traditional moral values, hinging his arguments on clarification of terms and expressions, living life to the fullest, affirming an individualistic way of life, focusing on the now, does, and on pleasure relatively, as hedonism he mentioned, and traditional moral values he actually marked virtues, modesty, and self-discipline and responsibility. Thus he holds to the point and the fact that today's pursuit of living life to the fullest is a direct threat to society's traditional moral values. I then take you to the first speaker against the motion, Franklin Fomukong.
Thank you very much, Father Moderator, for giving me the opportunity to say a word or two on this topic. You see, the topic, first of all, phrasing the topic is very long, so it needs a little bit of explanation so that we get parameters clear about what we are saying. Today's conception, you see, when we talk of today's pursuit for living life to the full, what are we talking about actually? You know, there's a certain social cliche that goes around today where young men and women, even old alike, say, I'm living my best life. So that's what our debate topic is focusing on. These characteristics, these qualities which ascertain, which define the best life of today, are they in any way opposed to traditional moral values? I want to talk of traditional moral values here. We're talking of simply these ancient values, not ancient actually, but values prior to now. Now, I'll break down my arguments into the various characteristics or qualities which the young generation of today has labeled as living a best life. And I'll tell you that these qualities and characteristics do not in any way threaten traditional values. but there is simply a new way of doing all things, a new way of adapting to new times and new challenges. Change, they say, is constant. And as we all can testify, the experiences in which we live today are different from the experiences of the 80s, the 30s, the 1500s, and even the time of prehistoric moments. Times have changed, and as such, we have to change with this time. And one thing which is characteristic of change, which is peculiar to our debate topic, is that I'll tell you this evening, that moral values arise from certain conditions in certain societies. You see, morality is outlined by man when he faces particular conditions. For example, if you are living in a particular society and we realize that many people, one man gets up and is getting married to 20 women, and there is another man in that community who cannot even manage one wife, what do we say? It will be good, we put a law. All men should get married to one wife. So you see that all these moral values, or most moral values, arise from conditions in the society. Now, Jesus had told us in the Bible that you do not put old wine in new wine skins. Yes. Trying to impose on the generation, this young generation of today, the Z generation, these traditional moral values, is putting old wine into new wine skin. And Christ had already told us that the result will be a cataclysmic quagmire. It will not be proper to do such a thing. Now, why do I say that these traditional moral values do not oppose the young people or today's definition of living your life to the fullest? Now, I'll simply tell you that first and foremost, if you want to apply in the strict sense traditional moral values to today's experiences, you will not make it. You wouldn't be successful. Of course, our ancestors and our fathers have told us, have emphasized a lot on things like hard work. That was what characterized traditional and ancient times. You are told in school, you are told by your parents to work hard. But in today's world, if you want to apply only the principle of hard work, you can never make it. In today's world, in this society of today, you need to apply hard work and smart work. For example, you see a young lady in a marital situation, she is suffering and almost dying, but dying simply because her ancestors had said you cannot leave the marriage. You see that is putting old wine in new wine skin, because the ancestors of those days never had these present challenges. So we who are in this present generation, having this present, in order to live our life to the fullest, we must adapt and as such redefine these traditional moral values. It is not a threat to them, but it is simply a further completion of these moral values, because even Jesus had said it in scripture. You know, Christ in Matthew chapter 5, when you read Matthew chapter 5, you will see a series of instances where Jesus said, you have heard how it was said. Then he comes now and said, I now say to you. You see, even Jesus is conscious of that change, that the man is a changing being. You have heard how it was said in the past, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. He now comes in. No, I now say to you. So too I am saying, you have heard how it was said, those traditional moral values. We are now saying to you, adapt your morality to the present times. If you go to the realm of career choosing, you see traditional moral values in ancient times. They will tell you, no, the patient dog eats the fattest bone. Go to school, come back, sit in the house, try to scout for jobs. My brother, if you don't apply the principle of smart work, if you don't engage yourself following the trend of modern society, you cannot make it. In order to live your life to the fullest, to enjoy this life in this present world, you cannot, as I earlier said, apply stricto sensu, in the strict sense, traditional moral values. I continue. You see, when we talk of living life to the fullest, as the Stoics will tell us, the greatest thing man is in search of in life is happiness. And as such, when we talk of living life to the fullest, living your best life, it is simply deriving the greatest happiness you can. And it's simply, you see, I'll give you specific paradigms when I'll be giving my conclusion. But as at now, in order to attain this happiness, adapt the moral values to the changing times. Things must not be as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be. Things change, and man must change as things change. Applying traditional moral values to today is putting old wine in new wine skin. As such, the conception of living life to the fullest in today's world does not, for me, threaten traditional moral values, but it completes it. It is a further perfection, because man is a changing being. Thank you.
Thank you, Franklin Fomukong, first speaker against the motion for tonight's debate. And Franklin argued against the motion that today's pursuit of living life to the fullest is a direct threat to society's traditional moral values. He equally hinged his argument on the fact that times are changing, and living life to the fullness encompasses moral values which arise with certain conditions and societies in life, and that there is need for adaptation of these moral values and morality to present times. And he equally noted that there is an absolute need for a redefinition of these traditional moral values. Of course, he equally cited scriptures. You have heard how it was said of old, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But now I say no, it is no longer the case. So, dear TV friend, that was Franklin Fomukong, first speaker against the motion. You are just following us and you are very much interested, which I know you are very much interested. You can get to us through the number projected at your television screens and chip in your own contributions. We shall all be delighted to hear from you as this debate actually unfolds tonight. And we shall be taking you to the set of second speakers for and against. And straight away we shall take you to the second speaker for the motion, Jude Zong, who will be arguing for the motion that today's pursuit of living life to the fullest is a direct threat to society's traditional moral values. Jude Aka.
Thank you very much, the moderator. Good evening, dear viewers. Good evening to my colleagues here in the studio. To begin this very pertinent topic, I would like to make some corrections. I like to hit the iron when it's still hot. Brother Franklin Fomukong lied against Jesus. That's just it has come to change the law. When Matthew chapter 5 verse 17 states, and I quote, "Do not imagine that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come to complete them. I have come to complete them, and not even a dot or a stroke from the law will be removed." That is the first thing. The second thing, Brother Franklin Fomukong falsely stated that man is the legislator, man is the giver of moral values, by quoting the example that in a society where a man can take care of 20 wives, the law is given by man is that man should get married to 20 wives. In a society where man cannot take care of one wife, you should get married to one wife. But I tell you, this is false. Man is not a legislator, a giver of moral values. At most, he is a custodian, a keeper. That is why in life, you will never feel an obligation to do what is wrong. No matter how man says it, no matter how many times we will tell you that, no matter how many times the society will tell you that abortion is correct, abortion is good, is right, you will never feel an obligation to abort, but you will always feel an obligation to preserve life. That shows you that man is a custodian and not a legislator of moral values. Permit me now dive into my arguments for this evening. This evening, we are reflecting on the impact of today modern man's pursuit or conception of living life to the full on traditional moral values. Now, the topic itself already shows that traditional moral values are good and we want to preserve them. Now we are trying to eliminate what seems to be a threat to it, which is our conception of today, of living life to the full today. What is modern man's conception of living life to the full? Modern man's conception of living life to the full is characterized by a total, absolute search for wealth, material things. Second, a total, absolute search for pleasure and a search for power. Now, every society is built up, every striving society has some fundamental moral values that keep it together. As Cardinal Sarah will say, moral values are the glue that hold a society together. If we are fine with the tiredness or the inadequate or the inordinate pursuit for wealth today, many traditional moral values are questioned. For example, integrity. We live in a society where integrity finds no place. Everybody wants to cheat another person. Everybody wants to be dubious in his way in order to maximize profit, because the absolute aim is wealth, acquisition of wealth. We live in a life where moral values like respect for human life have no place, because we want to be free. We are questing for absolute freedom. We want to be liberated from anything duty that keeps us on track. That is why we have arguments for abortion as a way of limiting the woman's right. These are threats to moral values. And one of the most glaring things about today's understanding of living life to the full is the quest for pleasure. Among the youth, among even the elderly, there is an inordinate quest for pleasure, a philosophy of hedonism, of consumerism, man wanting to self-satisfaction immediately. And this philosophy threatens the traditional value of discipline, of hard work, because man does not want to go through any toil again. Man wants an easy life. Man wants it all going as he wants. Man feels no obligation towards his neighbor. Morality has become individualistic rather than communal. Society has become holistic, hostile to everybody. Citizens cannot express themselves freely because everyone is hinging on his rights, a self-proclaimed morality. Everybody wants to be his own lawgiver. There is the pushing away, the keeping aside of religion that has shaped society throughout in order to invent new moral values. And as Friedrich Nietzsche, the great German philosopher, postulates, when moral values are eroded, man diminishes into nothingness and emptiness, into a meaningless void. That is why today in society we realize that our advancement, our technology has brought us so many opportunities, so many choices, but yet little or no direction. Man has returned to the state of being a wanderer, without purpose, without meaning. So with this, I firmly reaffirm the point that modern man's conception of living life to the full threatens traditional moral values. And unless man understands that to live life to the full is not about material pursuit, it's not about pleasure, it's not about a false or distorted notion of freedom which is absolute and without accountability to anybody or any authority, traditional moral values will be threatened. Not only threatened, but eroded. And when traditional moral values are eroded, the society diminishes and it is leading to one way, which is perishing. to end, I quote the famous Cardinal Sarah again. Traditional moral values are the glue that keep the society together, and every thriving society is built on traditional moral values. Thank you.
Every thriving society is built on traditional moral values. That is Jude Aka, the second speaker for the motion, and he capitalized his argument basing some clarifications on the fact that modern man's conception of living life to the fullest has to do with a total absolute search for pleasure, power, and the quest to dominate, thus hedonistic tendencies, pleasure inclined, and so many others, citing the famous Cardinal Sarah that moral values are glue to the society. And he equally noted that some traits are as a result of the inordinate desire by so many people to have a control and a bastion for power, inadequate or inordinate quest for pleasure, and the philosophy of hedonism is the domineering factor of modern man's conception of living life to the full, and thus this threatens the traditional moral values of discipline, hard work, of respect, and just to name a few amongst many. That was Jude Aka, the second speaker for the motion. I know, dear TV friend, that you are very much interested and following up the debate so far. So good. The lines are open. You can always chip in with the text, your own contribution for tonight's debate with regard to our caption and topic, our motion for today's debate. Today's pursuit of living life to the fullest is a direct threat to society's traditional moral values. Much ado about nothing. I then bring you to the forefront with the second speaker against the motion, Yannick Funky.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Fellow members of the opposing camp, thank you very much for your very fruitful argument. I am coming against the motion that today's pursuit of living life to the fullest is a direct threat to traditional or the society's traditional moral values. And I'll make reference to some very clear texts that will substantiate my argument and give us enough reason to feel that that is just a charade for us to feel that thinking about living life to a full attacks the traditional moral values. Now, I want to take us to John 10:10. Let's go to the Bible. Christ is the one who defined how we should live. John 10:10 says, I have come that they may have life and have it not half, but abundant. In other words, in full. So Christ already defines how we should start living life. We should live life to the full. If we understand that every man has been made with the new instructions from Christ to live in full, then let us go to our moral values. I think that our traditional moral values, as good as they are not supposed to be infinite. There are modern changes that are made in our traditional moral values that suit context. Because even before Christ, or when Christ came, lots of values changed. The Mosaic era, Christ made modifications to them because there was an era that changed. And now we are living in a new era. And I think that a lot of things change. First, traditional values were shaped by specific historical, cultural, and social contexts. As society evolved, so the interpretation of these. So I think that living life to the full may reflect a broader context, and the definition of happiness and fulfillment are not necessarily going against the traditional moral values. What about the values we're talking about? We're talking about integrity. We're talking about you want to enumerate all those other values that we want to term them moral. These values are really not changing per se. We're not having a society that has gone to its knees because people want to live life to the fullest. No. Instead, we have a buoyant society. We have a society that love God. We have a society that love humanity. But we also have a society that love themselves. I tell you, in the years when I was growing up, we were not fortunate to have television at the time we were growing up. In the 90s, in the 80s, in the 90s, but we crowded ourselves around those that have, and we cleaned plates for them. We cleaned the house and we did all those things for them so we could have the opportunity to watch TV. Today, you have an opportunity to have TV by you. But I tell you, has anything changed? The pursuit of happiness. You can live life to the full now because you can actually watch TV, you can do all those things. But have the values really changed? We can still clean the plates. We hardly have anybody except the really delinquent that will say they cannot attach those traditional values. So I still stand to say living life to the fullest really doesn't threaten our traditional moral values. And then let us look at those traditional religious values, like in the old going to church and coming together, like in the old praying together. Those values are still there, like they were years and years. People still worship in congregations, in church. People still worship on Sunday. So where is the traditional moral value threatened? When we still have all of those things, yet people are still living, dynamics of change, and people want to live individualistic lifestyle because they feel that the pursuit of happiness will start even from within. Aristotle said the greatest of everything that man seeks is happiness. And in the pursuit of happiness, we not try to narrow down ourselves for our self-esteem, for our mental health. We want to be individualistic, but that doesn't cancel the traditional moral values that we respect. We still have those values in place. Integrity, my opponents talked about. Yes, there are some questions about integrity in the society. Yet, a greater majority of the world, including the panel of other side, they are people of integrity. We still have people who have integrity, and the society runs with the traditional moral values. Yet, we are not doing those things we did before. We are not living life to the full. Many are trying to attach themselves to things that bring them more happiness and give them reasons to live, and not necessarily attach themselves to those traditional affiliations that will cause them reduce their esteem. So I stand to say that yes, today's pursuit of happiness, living life to the full, is in reality, but that hasn't threatened our traditional moral values, because those moral values are still there. They are still intact. Today's life, the moral value like self-care, pursuit of purpose, mental wellness, work-life balance, and all of them, they are still there. They have not gone anywhere. And people still we now have digital platforms where we raise awareness of issues like gender equality, which of course these are new values, climate change, Human rights. These are values that do not exist. Because if we don't have human rights, we're not going to have a better society. These are progressive moral values that we have brought that make society better and make us live life to the full. The gadgets we have in our hands make life to be better. The younger generations are growing to respect their elders in a different way. These are differently, we shouldn't always have the traditional orientation of defining moral values, because that is where my opponents are hinging on. They feel that as it was in the beginning, in the interpretation of moral values, it should be. Some social constructs have readjusted themselves. Like in the Jesuit era, in the time of Jesus, we had issues of counting women. The value at the time, women were not given any value. But what is the issue now? Should we have kept that traditional value because we want to keep tradition? No, we have evolved. A lot have evolved. And we need to embrace all of these for the betterment of society. And I want to run up by saying that everything we seek in life is the pursuit of happiness. And if you can live your life to the full and the fullest and respect moral values in a way that builds humanity and society, then live it. The traditional moral values as interpreted by the panel on the other side, I think that do not hold any water. So I stand against the motion that today's pursuit of living life to the fullest is a threat to society's traditional moral values. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Everything we seek in life is a pursuit of happiness. Says Yannick Fonke, the second speaker, against the motion for tonight's debate that today's pursuit of living life to the fullness is a direct threat to society's traditional moral values. In his argument, he noted that for real, today's pursuit of living life to the fullest is a reality, that there's no gainsaying to that. But he went further to say that doesn't mean that it is a direct threat to society's traditional moral values. And he noted that when we talk of traditional moral values, we talk of integrity, praying together, communal dimension of worship, and sharing with one another. Those values of self-care, work, life, and balance, climate change, human rights, which are modern values of concern in our contemporary society. Thus, he argued against the motion that today's pursuit of living life to the fullest is a direct threat to society's traditional values. Those were the first set of arguments we had for tonight's debate. Two on the side of those and two on the side of those against the motion for tonight's debate. Dmrtv friend, once more, if you are just joining us, you are onto the program Debate over the Divine Mercy Radio Television, which comes to you every Saturday from 9 p.m. And we are all encouraged to participate with our own points of view, and we shall be delighted to have them read here to the hearing of each and every one of us. This point in time, we shall be given the opportunity for our debaters to dot their I's and cut their T's, culminating their arguments for tonight's debate. And so straight away, we shall take you to the culminating argument on both panels, those for and those against. We begin with those for, with their culminating arguments for tonight's debate.
Thank you very much, Father. I have waited for this moment when I listen to my opponent speak. And I would like to ask Mr. Yannick, when he builds a house, does he pay attention to the foundation? We fully well know that when care is not taken at the very beginning of the foundation of every house, the roof definitely collapses in the nearest future. And so when you talk about Aristotle and beautifully quote him wrongly when you talk about happiness, Aristotle makes it clearly there when you talk about happiness, you cannot dissociate happiness from virtue. Virtue, which is a fundamental principle of traditional moral values that society has completely kept aside. And so when we talk and touch the North Poles and the South Poles, stretching to stretch right up to even the East and West, I would like us to go back and look at our present society that is threatening to completely eradicate traditional moral values in pursuit of a life of now, in pursuit of living life to the fullest. Can this living life to the fullest boast of a harmonious coexistence of people in the society? Can it boast of a society of love? Can it boast of a society of justice and equality? Can it boast of a society characterized by progress and authentic human growth? Can it boast of a society that upholds human dignity and common good? Can it talk about the spirit of communion or the spirit of real altruism? I want you to consider all of this, and above all, can it hit its chest boastfully and talk of a society that puts its priority on mutual relationship imperative? Can it? Of course it cannot. Only a society that treasures and holds traditional moral values at heart can offer all of these stated above. And so there is something that this society of today, this contemporary society, has completely done to traditional moral values. It is in a kind of way redefining morality and ethics, which is not supposed to be so. In a kind of relativistic mindset, it is redefining morality and ethics. And so when you put traditional moral values on one side, the immediate contradiction to contemporary cultures is very clear. Let us consider the following. When we talk of self-discipline, the direct opposite to contemporary culture is instant gratification and impulsiveness. When you go to honesty and integrity, what is the result on the opposite side? Relativism and manipulation of truth. When you on the other side, you have responsibility and duty, and on the side of contemporary culture, there is individualism and the avoidance of accountability. When you talk about respect of life, what can this society of today offer to you? It can only offer to you the acceptance of abortion and euthanasia. That is killing human values right to the core. We can go on and on and on, but man must be careful and tread with caution not to fall into this trap, because once you get into it, to escape is a whole difficulty, because the solid, lasting and expressive object that served us in the past, that served our fathers in the past, are being set aside for quick, for shoddy, for replaceable trivialities with which we now surround ourselves. And I would like to conclude this debate. I beg the moderator to give me a minute to complete this debate with a beautiful analogy. I have waited for this moment. There is a beautiful analogy of the garden and the forest. Traditional moral values are like a carefully tended garden. In this garden, each plant is nurtured with care. There are boundaries, order. There is deliberate planting to ensure harmony, to ensure growth, and to ensure beauty. The gardener prunes, he waters, he protects the plants to help them flourish over time. But what does contemporary culture have to do with this analogy? Contemporary culture is contrast to this. It's like a wide forest growing unchecked. Nobody to look after it. In this forest, plants grow freely without boundaries or order. While the forest may seem vibrant and full of life, some plants crowd other plants not to grow and blossom very well. Weed spread rapidly, and the lack of care can lead to imbalance and chaos. What is the beautiful interpretation of this analogy that suits so well in this our context of this debate? Just as a garden requires discipline Just as a garden requires care and structure to strive, traditional moral values provide the framework for a healthy and balanced society. The wild forest, though natural and free, can become overwhelming and destructive if left unmanaged. Similarly, the modern culture's focus on unrestricted freedom and instant gratification can undermine the stability and beauty that traditional values cultivate. In conclusion, I would like to beg my opponents who have spoken so well, like gentlemen at the battlefront, that when a man is sick, they will bear with me, that when a man is sick, there is one thing that man seeks, and that man seeks medical attention. And in this case, I would like to say that contemporary culture is sick. We must accept contemporary culture is sick, and the only solution and prescription that I will give to contemporary culture today is the prescription of going back to traditional moral values. Without that, man is nothing. Without that, man is empty. He diminishes into nothingness. I rest my case.
Thank you, Bernard Asongne, who actually drew the curtains with regard to the series of arguments they had for the motion with regard to today's debate topic, that today's pursuit of living life to the fullest is a direct threat to society's traditional moral values. Dear TV friend, I know, yes, the temperature is, of course, heightened, increasing in so many people now. The atmosphere is becoming a little bit tense and hot with the arguments that are actually unfolding here. But that notwithstanding, we are not yet done. Let us equally get, of course, the last speaker against the motion, who will be wrapping up the arguments against the motion for tonight's debate. Franklin Fomuko.
Thank you very much, Father the Moderator, for giving me the opportunity to say a word or two on this topic. As I earlier said, that was my first statement when I started speaking. So, in conclusion to what I have to say about this topic, you see, I love so much the dimension of arguments which my partner took for this debate this evening. I love so much that dimension. You see, at all times, I think man must always acknowledge that light comes from different places. There's not just one source of light. What we are trying to look for here today, this evening, is a pragmatic and workable moral system which suits man at his present times. You see, my opponents, I would say, have a very negative and wrong interpretation of contemporary society's moral system. You see, they always want to place like, today, in society today, there's a lot of abortion. Society today, there are a lot of wars. Society today, there's a lot of moral decadence, and morality is so low. I put it to you. All these issues we are having today in society, were they not there in times past? You see, one of the greatest is not actually a history book, but it brings to us history, is the Bible. In scripture, we hear of a whole city, Sodom and Gomorrah. I don't know the two cities, who were perpetuating acts of homosexuality. A whole city, that's what we're talking of. A whole city here. Just Lot and his family were free from such tendencies. Then you want to come and tag only contemporary society as being morally decadent. There are aspects of traditional morality which demand cleansing. There are aspects of traditional morality which do not hold even to reason. That is why, as I earlier quoted Christ, he said, "You have heard in times past, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth." He is not coming to abolish, he is coming to give further perfection, so too today our moral system in contemporary society comes to give a further perfection to traditional moral values. Nobody says traditional moral values are not important. I earlier said it. If you apply traditional moral values stricto sensu, in the strict sense today, you will fail. Why do I say so? You see, as I earlier said, my opponents have this negative and wrong dimension of contemporary moral systems. But I also tell them, in some years to come, what we have today will be considered traditional moral values. We simply call them traditional moral values because of their priority in time and nature. In 100, 200 years from today, what we are living now, what we are doing now, they will consider it traditional moral values. So if you say that what we are doing today is not the best, therefore this debate in few years time will be irrelevant, or what you are saying will be irrelevant, because you will be debunking what you have said today a prioristically. What I'm basically trying to say is traditional moral values are there, but there are various and very sensitive aspects of these traditional moral values which have been left us by our ancestors, which need a lot of cleansing, a lot of clarification, and as such cannot be taken up by the young people of today. Moral values must be placed in order to suit the times. Thank you.
Moral values must be placed in order to suit the times. That was Franklin Fomukong wrapping up arguments against the motion for tonight's debate that today's pursuit of living life to the fullest is a direct threat to society's traditional moral values. What have you? What is your take? What is your stance with regard to this debate topic for tonight's debate? So far, so good. It has been wonderful. We have been able to reach to one of our highly esteemed audience who has been watching, and of course with much delight tonight's program. That's Madame Prudence, and she noted that I stand for the motion, and with those for the motion, that today's pursuit of living life to the fullest is a direct threat to society's traditional values. And she made mention of the fact that I take happening in our domestic homes, for instance, with children who want to be given all the acts and all the like phones without working, basing their arguments that they will be happy if provided for by their parents. I think if this is done, it is not correct, and we cannot say that they are living life to the fullest only when they are provided for. So according to Madame Prudence, she's standing with those for the motion that of course, today's pursuit of living life to the fullest is a direct threat to society's traditional values. Thank you so much for that input. We appreciate so much. Dear TV friend, it has been wonderful so far, so good. We have had a series of good arguments, propositions which have been raised, and we have had so much challenging arguments, debunking of assertions, contradiction in terms, which makes a debate the name a debate. Thank you so much. Before we draw the curtains, I will want to use this opportunity to actually remind our highly esteemed audience that this is an intellectual exercise which is meant to actually keep our thinking caps on board and to actually enliven our minds to think and reflect and equally rationalize about happenings and situations and conditions in our contemporary society. Thus, a learning activity which is very, very important, and we are equally using this opportunity to tell our audience that as a parent listening and following this program, you can equally whet the appetite of your children during this moment, especially on Saturdays 9 p.m. to all get themselves glued with eyes gazed over Divine Mercy Radio Television to see how they can equally be motivated in one way or another to reflect and of course to even do research about topics like this. So this is so nourishing intellectual wise. Thank you so much. I want to use this opportunity to thank Bernard Asongne, who argued for the motion alongside Jude Aka, both seminarians on pastoral assignment at the Divine Mercy Radio Television. They are very, very familiar faces in the house. Thank you so much for the debate. I equally want to use this opportunity to thank Franklin Fomukong, equally a seminarian on pastoral assignment at the Divine Mercy Radio Television, a familiar face in the house as well. And of course, Mr. Yannick Fonke, of course, the master and the great journalist himself, always readily available and chief of programs over the Divine Mercy Radio Television, who reflected alongside Franklin Fomukong, arguing against the motion for tonight's debate that today's pursuit of living life to the fullness is a direct threat to society's traditional moral values. I know so many of you have a lot to table, but because of time constraint, perhaps we'll take your suggestions or your remarks subsequently. At this point in time, we want to say the arguments were very, very finely fixed and well passed across in simple and in very, very clear terms. There was clarity of arguments, the language was simple, and of course the arguments were punctured on both sides, which made the debate so interesting. We hail these aspects from both sides, those the debaters for and those against. And equally there was the ability and energy input to clarify terms with concrete examples, with concrete, expatiation of the terms and the values and of course what it means to live life to the fullness with citations such as Aristotle and the Summum Bonum, the highest good and happiness. All this they had to expatiate on it, and they were expanded in terms of the defense mechanism to marshal their argument, which should be held. At this point in time, we are going to say thank you so much, but we shall say those who were victorious for tonight's debate, as is usually the case. According to our reckoning, humans as we are, and of course with our little calculation, those for the motion emerged with a 92% for tonight's debate, while those against the motion had a 90% score for tonight's debate. So the day goes to those for the motion. Congratulations to you, and congratulations to you as well. We hope to get on board another very interesting topic for next week's debate. Dear TV friend, you can always get to us giving your contribution or a topic for debate which you think is very, very necessary or good. We can consider, examine, and bring to awareness. And those who are equally interested in debating, you can equally get to us. Feel free. Divine Mercy Radio Television is open to all. General supervision came in from the station manager, Joyce Monga, and we are for the broadcasting team. We had JC Agum, who is working with a team of broadcasters, and our debaters tonight, all present: Bernard Asongne, Jude Aka, Franklin Fomukong, and Yannick Fonke. For the moderator and host, I have been Father Martin Moka. Wishing you a blessed weekend and hope to take another rendezvous next week, same time, same TV station. Stay blessed.